Hello, everybody out there in Panther country. This is Tim Whitaker coming to you with Panther Vodcast number 11. And my guests today are instrumental music, or AKA band directors, Kim Hopkins and Jason Koele. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, we'll jump right in. We've got a long list of things to talk about. Let's start with kind of an introduction and maybe tell us a little bit about your background. Kim, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I grew up playing piano and trombone, and I actually almost didn't even try high school band. And so that's why I always tell kids to just go ahead and try it. And then, so my original plan was to be an English teacher. And then I got into high school band and just thought, nope, this is what I want to do. And so that's kind of how I ended up going that route with my career, was just having a great band experience. I went to UW River Falls. I graduated in 2004 with my instrumental music degree and general music. And this is my third school, by far my favorite. My first job was at Durand High School as a long-term sub for their band director who was ill. And then I was at Barron High School for 2 years. I followed a very, very fabulous longtime band director. And then I knew I wanted to teach middle school. And so when this job was created, I came here. And this is my 10th year here, which is crazy.
So talk a little bit about that. I guess I didn't realize that the job was created. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Dave Larson, who was the band director here for a long time, did the whole thing, 6/12. And when the district started growing, that kind of became a little bit too much in his schedule. The buildings were split. There were lots more kids. And so they created this job. And so my first 2 years I worked with Dave. He became high school only. And then I was over here in the middle school. And that had its own set of growing pains, even though it was really exciting, because he was used to just one director, so he could cart stuff back and forth, music or instruments or whatever. And so Jason and I have still been sorting some of that out 10 years later, getting stuff in the right buildings and whatnot. So.
Okay. Jason, would you like to tell us about your background?
Sure. So I started off playing music because of my dad. My dad was an alto saxophone player, and he actually started me off in 4th grade. And I actually hated it to start with. I self-proclaimed that I wasn't a very good musician, so I quit during 5th grade. So I actually got exposed to music very early. But then my dad kind of forced me to do it when I came into middle school. And I fell in love with it. It kind of, my parents tried to get me to formulate what I wanted to do as a career. So I started looking into what vocation means and what my skills were. And I, like Kim, was faced with two options, kind of. So I had this music background that I loved to do. I was passionate about it. I was good at it naturally. But I also had was very close to going into aerospace engineering. I was actually accepted to Iowa State University for their aerospace engineering program. And I had to choose whether to go there or pursue my passion of music and youth and family ministry at Augsburg College. And I kind of went just with my gut and natural ability. Although I love space and science, I went based on faith. So I went there and loved every minute of it. I was there for 5.5 years, and during that time, I was able to go to Romania and the West Coast, Oregon, Vancouver, Arizona. And then I wanted to take a break from music because I was there for so long. I did a study abroad program in Africa, in South Africa and Namibia, which pertained more to education than music. But I ended up getting connected with a German saxophone instructor there, and I played in a nightclub with him while I was there too. So music doesn't really escape me ever. But I found that I loved it. I was passionate about it. It gets me every time I play or I conduct, it's something new. And this is my first job. I long-term subbed in Prescott for a semester as their choir director while they were switching choir directors, and then I did a short stint for the band director after that long-term sub. Did 2 weeks of long-term subbing in this district before they hired me. So I did the last 2 weeks of school, and then they asked me to do the Roberts Days Parade, and then they offered me the position after that. And I would say experiencing at least long-term subbing in other districts and doing a lot of district observations in college, I love this district. I love the feel that it gives as far as the staff feels like a family. I think the arts here, especially music, is very, very supported, as evident by our concerts and the building of the auditorium and stuff like that. But super happy to be here. But it's kind of my background and how I got started in music.
Very interesting. So you both were long-term subs, so it's a good lesson to future or folks that are interested in going into education to just get your foot in the door subbing, and good things can happen. I was trying to think of something witty to draw a comparison between aerospace engineering and music, but I'm failing.
It's mostly in the physics realm.
Okay, there you go. So Kim, tell us about your family.
My family, I live in Cumberland with my husband, Dan, and I have 3 awesome stepkids, and they have all flown the coop. So I am an empty nester pretty fast. So my stepson, Preston, lives in Colorado, and he works one-on-one with a special needs young man. He takes care of all of his curriculum planning, and he works with occupational and physical therapists and is one-on-one with that student over 40 hours a week. And so he has kind of found his way back to being an educator. He went to Northland College for outdoor education. And my stepdaughter, Hannah, lives in Green Bay, and she is a hairstylist. She went to Paul Mitchell and has been working 40 plus hours a week, which is not always easy as a hairstylist. Building a client list. She's really happy and enjoying Green Bay and all the Packer games that she gets to go to. And then my youngest stepson, Bryce, just graduated from Marine Corps boot camp in October, and he just actually got his MOS. He's going to be a rifleman in the infantry, which is frightening but exciting for him, and it's right up his alley. So, and my husband Dan is the band director at Cumberland High School, and I'm pretty active with his group because they have a competitive marching band, and I work with them in the summer and the fall. And my mom and dad are both still, thankfully, alive and well up in Cumberland as well. And my brother just got engaged recently, and he lives in Milwaukee.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Jason, your family?
I grew up around the area. My family is from Prescott. Currently, my dad is still there, and my mom is in Roberts. I have a sister who is the youngest of my siblings. She is in her senior year at Carleton, and she is getting her degree as a physician's assistant. She's doing some cool experiments with monkeys right now and things like that. My brother, all of my siblings are very musical. She plays the French horn. My brother played the tenor saxophone. He decided not to go with the music option, and he went with the physics option. So he took the science option. Colorado right now with doing work with construction, and he just recently got married, and they are expecting their first baby girl coming up around the same time my son was born, which was 9 months ago on January 1st. So I have an April Fool's baby. His name is Emerson. My beautiful wife, Jessica, and she is from St. Louis. Her online while I was in college, and we've been married for years now. Life is good.
I saw Kim biting a hole in her lip when you were talking about your sister working with monkeys.
Yeah, she's doing cool psychological stuff with them right now to go along with people with special needs. So some different.
Okay. Neat, very neat. So Kim, why did you choose? You both talked a little bit about it, but why did you choose a career in music education?
Well, I knew that as much as I loved playing my instrument, trombone or piano, that performing, while I wanted it to be something I did forever, I did not want to pursue that. And as I said, I had another interest in either teaching special ed, which is what my mom did for 33 years and recently retired, or English teaching. And so I thought, well, I guess, if I love music, but I don't want to perform for a living and I love education, I'll be a music educator. And what I really, really love about it, and I kind of knew this going in because you have your band directors or your music teachers or your choir teachers for multiple years, is the relationships that you build with students, how you really get to see them progress as people and musicians. I think it'd be heartbreaking to have a kid for a year and make a connection and then you never see them again. So I feel very lucky that we get to see our students for multiple years.
Jason?
Right along those same lines Kim was talking about, I never wanted to be in performance. Say that I'm not a good player, but I never really to that area of music. I was more about the relationship side and establishing those connections, because I had a great experience with and just kind of it grew. We talk still today just about musical things and hanging out once in a while. Connecting with, for me, high schoolers and having those conversations about life and to go and why they're here and why education is important, and establishing those types of relationships is the most important part. I think it's just a bonus. So as we develop those relationships, we're able to draw out of the kid and educationally bites.
Yeah, you mentioned the word vocation earlier, and obviously there are a couple other words that are similar. Avocation and vacation are similar to vocation, but I once did a presentation on the three. But avocation is kind of basically otherwise known as a hobby, what we do for enjoyment. Our vocation is what we do to earn money, and obviously vacation is what we do to have fun. But when I think obviously both of you and I feel the same way in my position. All three are the same. It's what we do for enjoyment. It's what we do obviously to earn money, and it's what we do to have fun or even as our escape. So kind of like if you pick a job that you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. So everybody I work with here, I think at least 99% of them feel that way, and that's what makes us such a great school district. It starts with the educators that have a passion for what they do and truly love what they do in their curricular area, and obviously working with their students. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. It's evident in the both of you. So you talked a little bit about the next topic. Perhaps we can expand more on it. Why did you choose St. Christ Central?
Office, please. Mr. Kirk, call the office.
Okay, Mr. Kirk needs to call the office. But other than that, Kim, would you like to start?
Sure. As I said, well, actually, this story goes back even further. The choir teacher, Miss Rowdy, and I were college roommates. We didn't know each other before going to college, but we got to know each other in the music department, and we lived in an apartment with a couple other girls. And so we had, a pretty solid friendship, and she came to St. Christ Central right away, and I went to Durand and Barron, and she was the one who told me that, their music department was going to be expanding and there would be this job. And so, and I had known from talking to her that the district was growing, and I liked the location, that it was near the Twin Cities, but still a small school in Wisconsin. And so I applied for it and I went for it with gusto, even though I was very happy teaching high school band at Barron. It was a great school with great kids, but I just knew that my strengths and kind of my personality is a good fit at the middle school level, which means I'm a spaz and I'm weird. And as I said, when I was talking about my family situation, I live in Cumberland, and so it's a 50-mile drive one way. And some people have said, "Why do you do that?" And the truth is, I have, just for the purpose of savings and gas mileage, looked at other schools, and it just doesn't compare. Like you said, the people that I work with are fabulous. The music department, first and foremost. We've had some changeover, and I think we're really locked into a good group of 5 right now in our music department. The staff at the middle school, and I've felt that I can trust and respect all of my administrators all the way through. And so, I look at other jobs that might be closer to home, and I think, nope, because exactly about what you said, how I feel when I get up to go to work. The avocation, vocation, and vacation thing. Nothing else has even come close.
And you, Jason?
I found out about the central position through a former employee that worked in the Prescott district while I was long-term subbing. And I met Glenn Webb, the principal at the time, for the first time when I handed him my application. Interestingly enough, we had to take this survey, per se, an online test about situations that were opinion-based, but the district had a answer they were looking for. And in that test, the candidates were ranked, and I was the 17th ranked candidate for this position. They interviewed in that order.
To meet you.
And the only way they knew who I was literally was by handing in my resume. But this advocate that told me about the position called up to the school, to Mr. Webb, every single day. And then the superintendent of Prescott called up every single day. And then eventually the band director called up every single day just to get me an interview.
I thought you were going to say just to get rid of you.
Yeah, well, at that point they were probably pretty annoyed, but I don't know why. Well, I do now, but looking back, I didn't know why none of the other candidates seemed to fit the position at that time or the need, or why it took 16 other candidates to go through to find why I was meant to be here. But I looking back on all the things that our district has gone through, I believe I was put here for a purpose to help get their situation. And I remember the only interview question I was asked after my 2-week subbing by the superintendent at the time, Mr. Bradley, was what is my potential? And coming out of college, you don't really get asked that question because you don't really know. And I had to answer him honestly and say that I didn't know. Like, to me, my potential was limitless based on the context that I'm in, as long as I have room to grow and expand and allowed to be creative. And I had goals in mind, but I didn't know what I was going to achieve quite yet. And I don't know what got him to think that was a good answer, but he did. And then the Roberts, I think he told me not to give a PC answer. So I didn't. I was just honest with him, and that was his assessment. And I think he saw something in me that was different than other candidates, and he just decided to go with his gut. And I'm really glad he did. He really gave me that opportunity to thrive in a great district, in a district that supports their teachers to grow and allow them to set goals. So got here. It was an interesting story, and a small percentage chance that I could be in this position, but here I am, and it's been an incredible experience with a great staff and music.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in that things happen for a reason, and also good things happen to good people. See, I'm glad I love doing these interviews for a number of reasons, but yeah, the story I heard, was it was 13. You were number 13, so wow, you're even more of a long shot than I had been told, and that they had to, like, okay, 13th, so we're going to interview 13 people because of, yeah, I mean, I put so much weight in references, you know, when we're looking for people, you know, past practice is the best predictor of future success. And so that, you know, you obviously had 3 advocates for you. Yeah, and I did hear that was a policy at the time. They had to take that certain survey, and
yeah. He scored worse than I did, so he was even further down the list. So. He said he took it. Yeah.
That's why I'm not a believer in that at all. But anyway, all right. So that's good. That's a good, some good background. So now that you guys are both hired here, taking you back to your first year, you know, can you describe your first year at St. Croix Central? Jason, would you like to maybe go first this time?
As a brand new band director, my first year was pretty intense. We hosted Soul Ensemble that year.
Oh, wow.
It was quite the experience. I had a lot of personal things happen to me that year as well, that kind of amplified things. But you know, stepping into a role where the program kind of had stalled out just a little bit, and there was room for a lot of goals and opportunity to get kids excited about something. I remember I had a small band at that time, so the upper band, my 10th through 12th grade band, had 30 members in it, and my freshman band, provided by Mrs. Hopkins, had 30 members in it as well. So both bands were equal in number size. So it was right around the 60 member number.
And what is it now?
Right now it's currently at 112, 113.
Doubled, yeah.
Doubled in size in 6 years. But I just remember the kids being super excited to do something or try new things, do something different. And I remember really trying to push that into getting them to see kind of where we want to go. For instance, like starting off the school year with a field show and doing a homecoming show with movements, which I don't know. I don't know much of the background of what happened prior to me. And I'm sure they did prior to me, but it just seemed like it was new to the kids and new to the community that we did this very, very simple, and Kim can attest to that with watching Cumberland and their great competitive shows, and even River Falls. I did my student teaching in River Falls, so I kind of got a taste for that, you know, marching stuff, and we did 3 very simple things, non-structured movements, and it wowed people, and the kids were just pumped about it. So taking that and moving it through the concerts and starting to progress in literature, and basically the kids, once I set the goals, the kids drove the ship. They wanted harder music. They wanted to reach new levels, and they kind of drove things forward. And then going through Soul Ensemble was a great experience. It was definitely stressful as a first-year teacher, but we got through it. It was a great learning experience. It was definitely baptism by fire that first year. I was just lucky enough to have a great music staff that was already in place and had been here for a couple of years before me. And was able to rely on them, but they also gave me the flexibility to design and transform a program. So, very supportive.
When are we in the rotation to host again?
I'm not actually sure. We, as a music conference, we decided to go like for a 2-year rotation. So each school would host twice, but then we didn't like that. So we've gone back to the 1-year cycle. So I think now that we're back on track, it should be like 2020 possible.
Okay.
Somewhere in the 20s, I think. We're coming over here.
Which will be here before we know it.
Absolutely.
Kim, what describe your first year here at Central?
Well, what was nice to come into this position was it was a new full-time position. So, and my, you know, it also wasn't my very first year of teaching. So it wasn't quite as much trial by fire, but it was my first year teaching middle school, alone since student teaching. So, to find out what the needs were and what the program was like, and having been a high school band director, I understood, that most of Dave Larson's day had to be spent at the high school. There's just a lot that goes on in a in a high school band, with pep band and playing at parades and graduation. And, that is a community service kind of organization, and Jason has really kept that up and even increased what they do. But, and so, he knew that he wasn't spending enough time here at the middle school, and he couldn't. And that was why he pushed so hard to get another band director hired. And so the kids were a little bit caught off guard, having someone there full time, pushing them right away, like, well, I'm here, so why don't you come in for lessons, and we're going to play every day. And, I'm never going to be gone over at the high school because there's something else going on. And so it was an adjustment period, but, they were very enthusiastic. Dave was a sweet, sweet man and a very good educator who knew how to build relationships. So that was already there when I got here, which was great. Their spirits weren't sagging except that they missed him. And that was mostly the 8th graders. And I said, well, you only have to live 1 year without him, and then you'll see him again in high school. So, but, right away, I just kind of tried to take a look at, okay, I know the district is going to be growing in leaps and bounds. We would hear the numbers of kids in the classes at the elementary school versus what we had in the middle school. And so I wanted to get things put in place right away to get more balanced instrumentation and build the literature over here. He used to, because of his limited time, Dave would combine the 7th and 8th graders for a concert. He rehearsed them separately. They were a separate class hour like they still are. But because they were smaller then, he would have them perform together so that there was enough instrumentation and so on. And so I did that for the first concert. And then I said, you know what, we're ready. Let's split them up. And it was a big deal. And I had parents calling very concerned. I don't know if you should do that. And I said, you need to trust me. And luckily, Scott Whittington was super supportive. He said, hey, you're the music expert. If you say this is what we should do, I'm behind you. And we did. And then we haven't looked back since. And it's been really nice to have a full-time person here to really try to develop fundamentals and, expand the options and opportunities for the kids. Because before, Dave certainly didn't have time for a jazz band in both buildings. And now we are able to because there are 2 of us. And then the other thing I would say that was kind of a shocker my first year was the percussion situation. There was a bass drum that had about 30 pencils in it and a couple of snare drums that kind of worked. And then a beautiful bell set, by the way, which we still have. And when you are trying to fund 2 buildings worth of band equipment with 1 budget, which is what Dave had, it wasn't possible. And he had to have a lot over at the high school. And so I wrote a grant for the St. Croix Valley, and we got the full $5,000 that you can apply for. And so that right away, that first year changed kind of the way the band room felt. And the kids were like, oh, this is for real. Now we have all these instruments and we can do all these different songs because we have the right instruments for them. So, that was kind of what I wanted to do, was not eliminate what Dave had done or anything like that, but just say, okay, well, this is what we can do now. So.
Yeah, the music curriculum certainly is unique, and for a number of reasons. I mean, a variety of reasons, and also that's why I chose you guys as one of my first educators to be part of the Vodcast. But you mentioned one of those things, obviously, and that is the expense. Probably the least expensive musical instrument you can purchase is what, $300, not counting drumsticks or something, but $300 horn maybe is a good probably entry level.
If we're talking
how much?
Higher than that if it's brand new.
Okay, yeah. So that's a nice, that's one of the challenges, I would say. Your growing numbers are great, but with that, obviously, creates some logistical issues. Number one, it's, getting enough instruments. Secondly, space. We specifically designed this auditorium. We put a real challenge to the engineers to have a stage proscenium that was a large stage that was large enough to accommodate 130 students on a stage. That was kind of unheard of. And if you think about that, that's pretty amazing when you talk about all auditoriums, throughout the state and the world. Secondly, music education curriculum. There's no other curriculum where you're on display like the music curriculum, and that's That's I guess I'd like to hear your input on it, but I would imagine that's a catch-22. Number one, yeah, it's a lot of pressure to be as good as you can and prepare the students to put out the best product. But secondly, I think the good part of that is, yeah, the community, your product, your students' abilities are on display like no other curriculum, which is pretty unique. And obviously, we'll get to that when we start talking about the auditorium more. But Kim, you talked about. Do you recall the numbers? Jason talked about the numbers you had first year and now. Do you know what the numbers were your first year and what they are now?
The first year, my 8th grade band, I think, had about 35 kids in it, maybe 40. The 7th grade band was a little smaller, just under 35. And then the 6th grade band was the first bumper crop class. They were the first class over 100. And I think about 75 or 80 kids were signed up for band. And so that was, something else too, space, having enough chairs, having enough stands. So, yep.
Yeah, you can't even have, like you said, you got to separate the concerts, by grade level or whatever, just to fit them in the multi-purpose room.
Yep.
Another thing that I'm not sure if it's unique to Central or not that common is requiring our middle school students to take music education. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's something that surprised me as well. And we've changed the way we did it. In 6th grade, students used to be required to take choir, and they could also opt to take band. And so my first year here, working with Michelle, she had 110 kids in choir every other day. And so I would go over and help with attendance and whatnot. And, we made it work, but it was just holy buckets. Then you have kids that didn't really want to sing. And so we talked to Scott, and he said, yeah, I think we can probably at this point shake that up a little bit. So in 6th grade, they have to be in either band or choir to try a performance group, which I think is great because a lot of kids might think that they wouldn't want to, and then they end up loving it. I even have students that are, I don't know if I'm going to stick with band. And as soon as they have their first actual performance, totally different story. They fall in love with performing in front of a crowd and the excitement that happens. So, but we do offer in 7th and 8th grade, if a student, has tried band and choir in 6th grade, they can take a general music class in 7th or 8th grade, and Michelle teaches that. What's interesting is this year nobody took it.
Wow.
In either grade. 7th and 8th grade, all the students have decided to stay in band or choir or both, and we do have students that are in both. So I think that really drives home that it's important, and that we have music all year and that there's a dedicated music hour, that has lent us a lot of support and a lot kind of validated what we do, which is great. Because now it's a core subject, so.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and that's we have we call a lot of those classes in the middle school exploratory. So just to give kids a taste, explore it, and see if they like it, which I think again is great. You don't know what you don't know. Give it a try. And well, I did not know that there were no kids in general music this year. I think that's outstanding that they're in either choir or band. And obviously, Jason, I'm sure you're pretty happy to see that the feeder program at the middle school as they come to you. I know they're well prepared. Do you want to talk about next, Jason, kind of the progression of the program over your years that you've been here?
Sure. Well, speaking to that too, with a lot of kids in middle school, it provides challenge of educating all those kids down there too. So like I travel down to the middle school twice a week to help Kim with lessons. So I mean, just working as a team and being able to provide every kid in our district with a musical experience, definitely not heard of in any other district, I would say. I think it shows that we're innovative in that we believe in creativity and we believe in giving kids an option to express themselves in a different way besides just test scores and things like that. So I think that's a huge thing, but it also shows our progression. So we've come up with a developmental progression that we're still kind of working on and implementing. But as Kim develops them and brings them up, to me, we try and bridge that threshold through lesson books and things like that, progression, that build happening. So we relied on the Rubank books. So we start the intermediate Rubank books in 8th grade, and then they freshman year where they finish those books or work their way through them. And then we go into the advanced Rubank methods books. Along with that, we also, I leave off their freshman year where they end their 8th grade year in difficulty, but I pack in literature, but I pack a couple more pieces on of that same caliber. So usually what we try to tier how much difficulty we have. Usually we'll have like an easier piece and then a more challenging piece in a different way, and then kind of the piece that we want to strive for. We model that in the high school as well for both bands. So we have an easier piece of a very lyrical piece that works on balance or different things, and then we go for like our heavy hitter, our big goal piece. That is usually, right now we're in media and advanced literature in the upper band, which is what usually colleges play, or advanced bands in the area are playing. So Tim and I have worked really hard these last couple of years building a band booster program and trying to network things in with the community. So getting involved with like the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in the community, or providing scholarship opportunities for kids, and then also working on some of those infrastructure things as far as instrumentation, so writing grants. The band boosters, all their funds specifically go to either scholarship or helping us purchase instruments for the school district based on our needs and where we're at instrumentation-wise. Just recently, I, like Kim, wrote a grant my first year as well to revitalize kind of the percussion section. And I received another grant this year to kind of finish up refurbishing that or restocking that. Recycled probably 75% of the instruments that were at the high school, and I would guess Kim the middle school as well. So maybe like 50% of our overall instrument stockpile, which is from the 60s, 70s, donated or not, just to kind of gain my access to money to purchase new stuff. Because misconception that an instrument that's left in the closet lives forever is false. So even instruments that were from a long time ago, they rot out, they get bad, and there's life expectancies for instruments. So to be in a district that point where they're willing to fund it and willing to provide us with instrumentation with our growing need is huge. We're only getting better. Along
those lines, I was going to ask you, and I don't know, now's the time, good a time as ever. But like when I first was here, I think it was the first year, Miss Rowdy asked Mr. Webb, who asked me if we could purchase choir uniforms, and I was surprised that we didn't have them, especially like with Mr. Bradley being a former, choir teacher himself. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, get a quote. It was like $6,000, and I thought, goodness gracious, absolutely. And and then seeing them that first concert in them, they just look outstanding. And so then I was thinking, why don't we have band uniforms? Is it typically for marching band that you get uniforms, or what are your thoughts? Is there a need for uniforms, or you're like, yeah, the most important thing is the instrument for making, music. So we're going to start with instruments first. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, pretty much. I think Kim would agree that most schools don't have like uniforms for concert bands. Even some colleges don't have uniforms for concert bands. Like, we had to buy our own suit. So the requirement was black suit coat, white button-up shirt, black dress pants, black shoes, black socks, and a bow tie. And sometimes we made the bow ties out of electrical tape. So like as far as like concert band, we go with concert dress, which is that black and white, which can be utilized for kids like forever. Like any interviews they have after school, or like even if they want to wear it to a date, or a prom. It doesn't matter.
They don't have time for that. They're practicing their instrument.
Yeah, right. That's right. But functionally speaking, at least as far what I've tried to build here is more of a concert band type program. Cumberland, I'm not going to speak for Dan because I know he's big into both, but we've never been set up to be a competitive field marching school, or even I know we used to be big into street marching back in the day, but even that has changed in the music culture now. And the only really marching that is in the spotlight or people do is the field marching, which requires those types of uniforms. Where we're at right now is all about how can we get the instrument needs taken care of? How can we revitalize the infrastructure instrumentation wise to handle the amount of kids that we have that express interest in our courses? So I think the auditorium is definitely a huge step in the right direction as far as exploiting the sound that we're starting to create. But that sound only comes from good quality instrumentation. So there's limitations with that, and you can buy as many instruments off of Craigslist or eBay and Walmart as you want, but what quality instruments you have, and those become spendy, especially at the high school level. Call them step-up instruments. So student level at the middle school, and then as their bodies and their air capacities and stuff expand or grow, it's like wearing a toddler sock and then growing out of your socks. Like the instruments are the same way. Your breath support changes. You're able to push more air through the instrument. The instrument has capacities that might not be able to handle a high schooler playing in a student model instrument. So then it becomes an issue of confidence. So a kid will become non-confident in their playing ability, not because they're a bad player, but because of the limitations of the instrument that they're playing. And that can impact how they perceive their sound, how they actually sound in reality, and how they sound in the context of the ensemble.
I thought a good carpenter never blames their tools. Not true in music, huh?
Well, it goes both ways. I mean, there's definitely skill deficiencies, but yeah. Instruments do they can blame it on a dull knife if they're not being able to whittle a stick correctly. It's got to sharpen the knife or get a better one.
So what you're saying is it's better to sound good than to look good, right?
Correct.
Priorities. Kim, you want to talk about the progression in the middle school music program a little bit?
Sure. I kind of covered some of it, I think, when I talked about, separating the bands and adding the jazz band. But kind of what Jason said, I really wanted to push the literature part of it, push the music reading, push, what we were playing and what the music meant and so on and so forth. And there's kind of a natural progression too when you're a beginner and you're in 6th grade. There might not be a lot of huge, meaningful pieces, that work within what you learn in your first year. But what's really great is that modern composers are kind of getting rid of that. They're thinking outside the box. They're finding creative ways to make beginning band music more interesting and more musical. And I've found that the kids are really, really responding to that. So I'm trying each year to infuse some current composers into what we do each concert so that the kids are getting something fresh and innovative, that's going to push them and motivate them. So I'd say between the jazz band being added, which is, like a club, and it's a great extension for those kids who music is really their passion or their kind of their gift that they have. Between that and the programming, that's the biggest progression I've seen. But I have also seen, as our community kind of changes, more of an emphasis on the importance of being good at their instruments. I used to get a little bit of pushback sometimes about requiring lessons for grades and requiring them to come to concerts and requiring them to put their instruments in their cases before they put them in their cup. Well, it's our instrument. What do you care what we do with it? But those days are long gone. And I think it was just kind of a culture shift for this area in Wisconsin, actually. And you have these people moving out from the suburbs who have seen, what kind of arts opportunities there are, and they're going to demand that of their child's school. And that's great, because then we have to rise to that, and then they have to rise to the challenges we set, and then we set the bar again. And, it's been really great. Sometimes, it's easy to get bogged down and, oh, that wasn't our best performance. But I just go back to where we started, and it's like, we've made a lot of strides. People enjoy the music more. People know how to go listen to a concert more, and it's great.
It's a journey, and maybe that concert was a moment in time. It could have been really great, or it could have been not your best. But I love that we don't underestimate our students. I love that we have high expectations for them and that they rise to that challenge. I truly think we're doing a disservice when we lower our expectations. And we see that time and time again. When you raise the expectations, they meet it. Kids like structure. They like to be challenged. And the most rewarding things are those things that, we've worked hard for. So I love that that's part of our culture. And I see you guys doing that constantly. I mean, when I first moved here and saw what was being played in middle school, I was amazed. I mean, it's like, I go, these kids have been playing an instrument for like less than 3 months. Can you believe that? I mean, it's amazing. And then I was just amazed by the sheer numbers when I started counting. Of course, when I moved here, Abby was in 7th grade, so my first experience was middle school. But now Trey's in middle school, Abby's in high school, and same thing. Just the level of and I'm nowhere near not even close to the expertise that you guys have. But I know enough from being in band myself. I can hear, I'm like, holy smokes, what they just did was super challenging. And the stuff that you push your kids to do is just amazing. And another thing, and we'll talk about kind of the science and why music's so important in a child's development, but another testament is the love that you instill in a lot of these students, that how many have went into that in the post-secondary and chose music to be part of their career or life. It's just amazing. We're already going on over 45 minutes. I told you these things go really fast. It's easy to talk about it. One thing I certainly want to touch on, last night was our first performance in our new space. Jason, maybe you want to start with talking about the new auditorium and the experience last night?
Incredible experience, beautiful facility that the community, I know that, and a lot of that comes from the community. They see the school district modeling that they care about music and are supporting that, and what we produce, like you said, our curriculum is very visible. And what we achieve is very visible. And the high school performs community all the time. And I think with us, with that progression and playing more difficult music and being good at it, doing outreach like pep bands and stuff like that, getting people involved, being excited about the school song and cheering, whatever, that stuff impacts the community. They see that and they feel more amped to either fund it or support whatever the district asks in those areas. And what they supported was just a phenomenal facility, along with a donation that made the space even better with the acoustical shell and the grand piano. It was challenging because we only had 2 days in the space to prepare and hear what it sounded like. But I wanted to make sure at least Kim was involved doing that last piece, A Christmas Story. And I was waiting to try and figure out who would be good for that role. And she found out that I was doing it, and she asked if she could be the speaker. And I said,
"Don't tell."
That would be awesome. Well, I didn't. I was like, that would be awesome. One, because it shows that we are networked as a music staff and we can rely on each other to do that type of stuff. In high school, love to see him come back up and partake in stuff like that. I even had the freshmen afterwards ask if she could come back and play with them, like in one of their pieces. Like, just the fact that we're networked like that, there's not a lot of curriculum areas that, like in science, I don't know if Mrs. Hinsman has any other kids ask if other science teachers could come teach a science lesson. Like, I mean, I don't know if that happens. I mean, you hope it does, but we have a unique opportunity to be able to network and experience those things together. And just with the fly system, I mean, I learned a ton last week that we had to run and operate that giant facility. Which is the stuff I learned in the education that I was able to get in those trainings and see how one of those things runs and operates. It was incredible for me to experience as well, that stuff, because we don't have one of those facilities, but now we do. And the options that we have are basically limitless as far as what we can do with the space and what type of educational opportunities we can implement with it. Outside groups and groups we have in-house. So last night was awesome. It was a great starting point. Because obviously with new facilities comes more challenges and more expectations and opportunities of growth. Mr. Hugh, one of the board members, came to my class today and he gave a presentation on, from a listener's perspective, things that we did well and things we need to improve on and how the space sounds from the house. It was good for the kids to hear, good for myself to hear, and what we can continue to anything. But just a new space provides for new opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, I mean, music is obviously so emotional to begin with. Look no farther than most teenagers, at least, with earbuds or headphones in all the time. I mean, music is a huge part of their lives. Some of it is wonderful, in my opinion. Some of it is not so wonderful. But last night, about halfway through the performance, I got very emotional because, number one, the music's emotional. But secondly, then you had the visual of just how amazing the whole thing looked. The sound, how awesome it sounded as compared to playing in a gymnasium. And then lastly, just like, because the first part of the concert, I think it was just kind of like a lot of shock and awe and amazement. And I was just like, but about halfway through, I kind of settled in and I just kind of looked around everywhere and it just hit me like, wow, this almost 3 years ago, we started this planning for the referendum. And it's been, that 3 years seem to have gone like that. And here we are in this first performance in this beautiful space. And here it is. And I, look, and it was packed. There were 600 people there for, the very first, Christmas concert. Absolutely amazing. And yeah, I thought you and Sarah did an amazing job of really putting on a show. You really used this space, how folks, the choir walked in the back and stood in the house and did different things, how you had Kim come and read, which Kim, you did an awesome job, by the way, of reading the night before Christmas. And the acoustics, the audio, honestly, I can't think of a program where we haven't had an issue with the microphone in 4 years here, right? And nobody knows that better than you. Not one issue last night. Perfect. I love the headsets, the packs that you wore. Couldn't even see the microphone. Sounded perfect. It certainly helped that we had the engineer from Audio Architect up there mixing the sound and lights. But the technology, I'm told over and over, because I don't have a lot to compare it to, but the technology that the folks in different subcontractors talk about, and even Myron and the designers, they're like, he goes, you got a really nice facility. They did not go chintzy on this by any means. And obviously with a space like that, the technology is really important. But to be able to control the curtain, the lights, and things with that little iPad up front, and it's and I talked to somebody afterwards. I on a scale of 1 to 100, I thought it was a 99, and then folks like we haven't even really begun to even hit the tip of the iceberg as to what the space can do. So that full fly system, amazing. Everything moves basically. So yeah, it looked and sounded unbelievably awesome. And to learn that it could be even better is really exciting. Kim, what were your thoughts about last night?
Oh, totally what you guys said. It was so great, and I was backstage to just kind of help facilitate some of the on and off and make sure, there were no problems or whatever. in the new space. But I could hear, even backstage, how different the choir and band sounded. And I would peek through, don't tell anybody, but I would peek through between the shell pieces and look at the audience, and they were so engaged. And that's what an auditorium can do for you. I mean, yeah, it's great for the performers, but it's also so great for the audience. First of all, you're comfortable. That's huge. And second of all, there's not a bad seat in the house for hearing, and you've got this whole spectacle going on up there. And nobody looked antsy to leave, and nobody felt like they couldn't move because the bleachers make too much sound. And I felt like the performers got so much out of it, and we, as music teachers, were just beside ourselves about it. But the audience too, I mean, for them to experience that. There were a lot of people that went that might not normally go to concerts. They just wanted to see what it was like in there. And I'm going to guess a lot of them are going to be back because they were very pleased. And that's what we want to do, is we want to say, hey, this is a great space. We can do a lot of great things in here.
Yeah, you're right. Not a bad seat in the house. And I just love how once that shell was put up too, it really brought it, from being so wide in the back to narrowing down, and that focus is on your product. But yeah, you can have the best space in the world, but obviously the sound and the product that's put out there is the most important piece, and certainly did not disappoint. But yeah, it certainly amplifies the abilities that your students have. So I bet you're excited. When are you going to be able to have your bands performing there, Kim? When's the next middle school concert?
The 7th and 8th grade both have concerts on February 28th, and we're planning on doing that at the auditorium. The kids are super pumped about it. A lot of them went last night. We get to perform there. So, and again, logistics, we're going to have to figure out, how we're going to do that. Michelle and I might need to look at restructuring how we hold our concerts, just so that we can use that space better, and tearing down choir or band, whatever. But she and I already started discussing what we think our best options are, and getting the kids over there to practice so that they understand how different that sounds than a big boomy gym. And so we're very excited, and it'll be here before we know it. So we're going to keep working on that.
We're over an hour already, but I want to just close with, I think anybody that's watching us probably understands the importance of music in a student's overall development. But you want to just briefly perhaps touch on that, and maybe any vision, what's next for your program?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll say. Okay, so, well, there's all sorts of science, and Tim and I were talking before we started recording about, all the studies saying how, brain development is very, music benefits it a lot, and I was talking about how when I teach beginners, it occurs to me how much their brains are doing, when they're first learning to read music, and then translate that into something physical that they do, and then assessing that on the fly to make sure it's the right thing, and it starts from there. But, and obviously, improving test scores and just overall brain function. I mean, that's great. Anything we can do to contribute to the whole child, we're fans of. But I honestly, for the most part, I look at music in a different way with how it affects the whole child. There aren't a lot of things in our current world that kids stick with for a long time. They're watching YouTube videos, they click, 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 click. They're listening to their iPods, click, 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 and you can't do that with music performing. You have to stick with it, and you have to do it consistently, or it doesn't work. And I'm finding that is a much bigger challenge for my students now than it used to be. Sometimes it's hard for them to stay engaged. So that's a good challenge for me. What do I need to do to keep them excited, to catch their attention and to motivate them? But it also is kind of one of those life lesson things where they learn to appreciate studying something in depth, struggling through difficulty, and then coming out on the other side and saying, hey, even though I might not hit all my notes every single time, I'm part of this band, and I just listened to our concert, and I was part of that. And I think that's really important because it's easy to isolate as well with technology. I love technology. It's got a lot of great uses, but I think it can be detrimental if we're not careful. And you can't isolate yourself when you're in a band or a choir or an orchestra. And, you forge relationships. We talk about being a band family here, and they laugh at me in middle school. But then, by the time Jason's saying it when they're in high school, they mean it, and they understand what that, what kind of value that holds for them. And also responsibility. I mean, so, it's a lot of life lesson things that I think, bringing an instrument back and forth, practicing it. Otherwise, you're going to get behind. And taking care of it, having a place for it and being careful and pulling your weight in the ensemble. I always tell them we don't have starters and people on the bench. You're all starting all the time. And so it's all these things that they maybe wouldn't get somewhere else if they're not involved in sports, or even if they are. It's a different type of team experience. But I think that teamwork and counting on each other and everybody being, working toward the same goal, I just think that is so invaluable for kids in building compassion and just all those other life skills I already said. So I won't repeat myself.
I couldn't help but listen to you here, and Jason hasn't even spoken yet. He's going to reinforce what you said. If anybody ever wants to bring up the topic of cutting music education, we just need to show them this video. It's that simple. I mean, yeah. Anyway, yeah, you talked about some of those things. I wrote down a few notes. Playing music is real-time formative assessment. I mean, they're constantly getting feedback and making adjustments on the fly. Yes, you're fighting that instant gratification, which kind of this generation seems to be expecting. It's not instant gratification. You said it takes time and endurance, which is another skill we're trying to teach our students, and that's resiliency. Life isn't easy. You don't hit the reset button like a video game or just a do-over. I think it's that stick-with-itness, that work ethic, and that resiliency that certainly music develops in our students. Jason, your thoughts?
Ditto to what Kim said. I mean, you can't really argue with any of that information. I guess, like you said, I can only reinforce at the high school level, especially as kids get involved with more things. It gets difficult for them to balance, and it becomes kind of a social thing for them. So kind of going into that band family thing, there to become music teachers or even professional musicians, but they're there to be with their friends, and it becomes a way for them to just be with people or be part of a team. And I think that's very, very important because it provides another outlet for kids that aren't necessarily, maybe don't think they're athletic or aren't on a team or another organization. But also, I think it's a testament to our district because we kind of made band a cool thing. I mean, when you have a quarter of the high school population in band, there's not the fear of I'm going to be the nerd or stick out as somebody that's different. We have a district that's really good at allowing kids to be who they are, and we support them in that. So whether it's band or sports or drama or FBLA or politics, whatever it is, religion, sexual orientation, it doesn't. I mean, we're very supportive in allowing kids to express themselves and who they are as individuals, and allowing them to be them. And I think being in band, especially at the high school, allows them to be creative. I think the world, like she was talking about with technology, you can be super creative with technology, but a lot of that is the technology being created for you. You're just applying it. You have to do it all. You have to. It's an expression tool. So kids can't emoji out, what they're feeling on an instrument. They have to play it. They have to find a way to express themselves in a different manner, in a healthy manner, whether to relieve stress or, which I love Pat Band for. So a lot of people say the drums and stuff play too loud, but for those kids, that's a stress reliever for them, and I make it that way. It's intentionally designed in my program for them to just be obnoxious and crazy and play to the best of their ability, but leave all the crud from school and the pressure and the stress in a different environment. Then they can just be themselves in that moment and just be free from all that stuff and just play, which is why I love pep bands. There's that huge emotional aspect for kids to figure out, how to deal with emotions as well. So a lot of the guys are like the macho high schoolers that don't like to cry or feel emotions, that are like, oh, I can't act like I'm scared or anything like that. But I think music helps draw those out, and they understand and can connect with those pieces. Like the piece last night, Hymn to the Fallen. I think they can emotionally connect with that, and they are able to express themselves and how they play in that form as well. It's tough to task to the extreme, I tell the kids. So not only are they reading, so it incorporates reading, but their dexterity in their playing. They have to utilize physical motion with their breath support at the same time while analyzing data and rhythms and how they sound in context to others and themselves in intonation and sound and reading dynamic. I mean, they're reading literature. They're doing so many things contextually when they're in an ensemble that you really can't get an education. I will say in any other classroom that's like music, whether choir or band. You're doing all academic principles in one classroom at the same time. For them to realize that is difficult because they don't realize that they're doing it like that, and they're really, utilizing the entire brain, which in studies, music illuminates both hemispheres when they're participating in it. You don't get that in other classrooms, and I think it's a break for them from technology. I think they appreciate that break and that social aspect. Just some kids that just plain love music and don't care whether they're good or bad. They just want to be in there. So I think music's an incredible art form, and it goes beyond the bounds of just education. It helps people in health, in any walk of life. That's why music is embedded in everything that we do. Commercials, movies, literally everything we do is as music. So, not to be cliche or anything.
Yeah, listening to you, I didn't realize that, but I wondered. I'm like, gosh, yeah, brought me back to playing. I'm wondering in my formative years if that did help me develop skills that I possess now. I'm certainly able to multitask and be saying one thing and maybe reading something and self-processing kind of the audience and all these, like you said, multitasking. We do that, obviously teenagers multitask with it. That's different. I think even about officiating basketball. I got 5 different things I might be thinking about at one time, but I'm able to process that all and keep cool and make decisions and stuff like that. But yeah, I hadn't kind of made that connection until I was just listening to you. You talk about emotion. Yeah, wow, that piece, Hymn to the Fallen last night. You had, when you had that video, the big screen, you see when you put the video and the music together. Holy smokes, that was very well done. That was another example of how we utilized the space and equipment last night. So, all right, that brings us to the end of this vodcast. Are there any final thoughts or things that you wanted to share before we signed off?
I thank the community. I think our community in school district's awesome. Very supportive of music, our music department, in this art form, and I'm appreciative of just the support from the community as well. Like it's not often. You get football towns and you get baseball towns, but it's not often where you get like a band town or a music town. And we definitely have one of those, and it's an awesome to be a part of.
Definitely. I forgot I was going to talk about pep band a little more. Yeah. Obviously, high school has that extra opportunity with pep band, another opportunity to showcase. But yeah, in all of your bands, I think one of the most important parts of kids sticking with it is that they have fun. It's obviously, you know, having fun and then something that you're good at. I mean, even as adults, we usually don't stick with something that we don't have fun at or we really stink at. Like, I don't dance in public, for instance, you know, because I know I stink at it, and then it's not fun. But yeah, it's another opportunity for our kids to be part of a family, and boy, do they have fun. Even I mean, I just love how they put their pictures up there, the seniors on the wall. You know, I mean, they just have fun. And yeah, I think I mentioned the other night, I'm like, can you turn it down a little bit? I can't even talk to, you know, my person I'm sitting next to, you know, tongue in cheek, but so loud, so fun. The turnout, like I said, you know, you'll get 60, 70 kids there playing pep band, and a lot of those kids obviously involved in other activities. And I've shared this before, but yeah, the opposing teams are legitimately disappointed on the nights that the pep band's not playing. You know, and they've said that. It certainly is one of the things that St. Croix Central is known for is our music. And I agree 100%. Mr. Kirk said that in the Wednesday morning meeting a couple weeks ago. You know, instead of or, you know, we've replaced or with and. We can be strong academically and athletically and musically and with other fine arts. I mean, there's no reason we can't be good at everything, and that's what we're striving to do. We create opportunities for kids in every realm. Kim, any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, it's truly been a pleasure working here. And like Jason said, I've really felt very supported in this community and in this school. And I feel very lucky to teach music here.
Yeah, and you guys are easy to support. So do a great job. Okay, thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Kim, I like in your shot, the clock's right behind you. So we got the clock. What is it, 4:40, so about an hour and 20 minutes. Like I told you, when you talk about something you're passionate about, it's easy to talk for a long time. So thank you again. Kudos to our outstanding music band programs. All right, take care.
Bye.